Welcome back. Welcome in. This is Country Roads Confidential at earsports.com, a Paramount podcast. I am Mike Casazza here on the open week during the football season, skipping the Q&A mailbag because, Chris Anderson, we have all the questions and none of the answers this week, which is probably not too different from the norm, but in the best way possible here, we are surprised by football. Typically, when we're surprised by football, it has to do with more negative things, coaching decisions, mistakes, defeat snatched from victory, so on and so forth. But whole different world right now. West Virginia 4-1 overall, 2-0 in the Big 12, tied for first place. I mentioned this before. I've got like this little gadget I mess around with that kind of predicts point spreads for games. It just kind of values some stats and comparison points that I like that I think are important. I have West Virginia favored in 5 of the final 7 games. Do I need to work on the formula, or is this actually real?
Yeah, I'm gonna take you to Vegas like Rain Man, if you get that. 5 out of 7, 5 of the last 7. A little 10-3, 10-2. No, wait, it was
9-3, but still
nine
pretty
and
good.
two. Yeah. See, this is why I need you. This is why I need you in your formula because I can't add 4 plus 5.
Yeah.
So
And the
yeah,
one that's always close that I've been kind of like just messed with all year, and I think I mentioned this when I was talking about voting and all that stuff, is Baylor. I don't know what to do with Baylor. Like all these little values that I have don't really make sense. And then yesterday, I was going over how they came back and won that game, and that didn't make any sense either. It looked like Baylor was at the point of like, what do we do with our head coach? And then all of a sudden they come back and they get a great win. Segue, West Virginia. Is the burner off, Chris? Or is it too soon to say anything like that when it comes to the future of the head coaching position here?
still too soon. I mean, obviously, like
Hmm.
if things go south and go south fast, like are we going to be sitting here? Say West Virginia goes 5-7, things just completely collapse down the stretch. Even 6-6. Like Ari's like, hey man, this is a great start 4-1. I think it's still too soon. Which maybe, hey, maybe this is the time for me to bring in something that I told you I was going to ask you something. I was going to spring it on you.
Okay.
I wasn't expecting to do it this early, but here I am. I'm doing it right now.
Okay.
How different? I know it says 4-1 on the standings, 4-1, 2-0 in the conference. And last year, through 5 games, when West Virginia was setting up for an open week, heading into a Thursday game, they were 2-3 and 0-2 in the conference. How different are these teams really? How different is it? I think it's more of a reflection of the nature of college football because one could argue this year's team is 2 plays away from being 2-3, just like last year's team. And last year's team was absolutely 2 plays away from being 4-1 at this point. So are these two teams actually that much different?
It's a great point. It's something I've been messing with on the side here, trying to figure out how I'm going to fill the gap in between games. Because Brown did make a point that was really interesting after the Texas Tech game, that a lot of the players on defense who really struggled against the Red Raiders last year were on the field and at the forefront in a win against the Red Raiders. And if you look around the field, that's true on offense too. The offensive line, the running backs, receivers, obviously a little bit different, but it's not like they're difference makers, period. So a lot of the same players, offense, defense, and presumably even special teams, I have my eye on that. And there's a lot of carryover there too, of course. So I wonder what the percentage is. It's certainly not the same quantity of play. For example, like your guys who were starters now maybe weren't starters last year, but played, or they were on the sideline watching last year and they played now. So maybe they upgrade in some areas. I think that's one thing. Um, the point being is that like how much has changed? Are they just an older, more mature, more experienced team? Have they been through the mud and would much rather be on the bank? I think that's probably a good point to be made about this team is that they did have some struggles, some hard times in the past, and it's not fun. Let's do everything we can to avoid that. And when it comes to those tough stretches in practice or tough moments in a game or those do or die situations in a game, a single snap or a single series, maybe they're just better at it. Or maybe they've learned from their mistakes. And when it comes to a situation, they got to make a call. They can instinctually or intentionally like reference how it went in the past. Let's not do that again. So some of it is like the coin just flipped the same, but ended on a different side this time. Example, um, Bryce Ford Wheaton drops the pass against Pitt, but Texas Tech drops the pass in the end zone against West Virginia. Not the same play, but like luck went the other way. And then even if you go to, some of the TCU stuff or some of the Texas Tech stuff, like a lot of like quirky 50-50 heads, tails things have gone West Virginia's way. Like they're due for some good luck. We've talked about that a bunch before. That's coming through. So I think a lot of it is that they have a lot of the same players. Continuity's good, who've learned and grown. That's helpful. They're getting some breaks. That's good too. But also, like, this may lead to a point that I have. They're just a different team when it comes to their approach and how they play and what they're going to rely on. And I think that gets them through stuff. But I also think what they do is harder on opponents now than it was last year, offensively, especially, but also defensively, too.
Honestly, to be completely honest, I wasn't sure if I was trying to make the argument that this team was more of a 2-3 team, or maybe last year's team was more of a 4-1 team than a 2-3 team.
It's a great
Because
point. It really is.
like,
Like, if people don't want to do that stuff last year and say, well, actually, they could have been better than their record. They're a play here, a call here against, one team or two teams of being, I don't know, bowl eligible. But it's not a stupid argument. Like, you could do that. People don't want to grant credit to failures, especially when they're maybe hoping that things change in a more permanent way. But even in the moment now, too, nobody wants to do the other thing and say, well, actually, they could also be 2-3. Nobody wants to do that because they enjoy the highs right now, especially when they've been down too. So it's a fun, if not frustrating, exercise. But I do think it gives you perspective for the past and the present.
just hey, welcome to the world of college football. It's margins are thin in the world of sports and especially college football, and West Virginia is very familiar with that.
Let me give you one.
Okay.
Springing on you. No jabs today, Chris. We're going right to haymakers.
Okay.
18-6, they lose the bowl game to Minnesota.
Okay.
Pretty pretty bad year when you think about a way to end it, the way to play it, all that stuff. They make a change. They go and they get Graham Harrell. They go out and they get JT Daniels out of the portal. And all of a sudden you're thinking, okay, skill position guys, fast finesse offense. Let's pass it. Let's run air raid. Let's get this guy who set all these records at Texas Tech under Mike Leach. This is a bona fide Big 12 offense now. Got the coordinator, got the quarterback. Starts off really well. It gets difficult, and that does not go well. That's a totally different personality than what you see right now. They did not go to the portal for a quarterback. They did not go out and get a slice spread offensive coordinator. They did not try to be a bona fide Big 12 team. What they're doing right now, as I just mentioned, it's hard on opponents. I mean, it's really hard to stop the run again and again and again. They just squeeze life out of you on the play clock, which puts pressure into different situations when you have the ball because you might not have it very often or soon. This just seems like when it comes to a team that understands is going to have to do it the hard way, doesn't seem to mind that. Again, it's early. Can they sustain this? I don't know. We can get into that. But to take attacks out of the other team with the way you play, because it's different. It's not fun to prepare for. It's not fun to confront. It does put pressure on your defense, even though it's not like a speed offense. That's not a vertical offense, but handing it off and running and just relentlessly doing what West Virginia does, results be damned. They're going to keep doing it. That's much more in tune with the way that they are wired as a program, maybe as a coach. It just seems like a personality that does fit. They've changed clothes. They had the very slick movie star style, so to speak, before, and now they're like the key grip. But it's working. How much of that, never mind style of play change, but that personality change, the wardrobe change, if you will, how much of that do you think explains maybe not the record, but also maybe the differences that we're talking about between last year and this year?
I think it does change the attitude. We talked about in the post game about how West Virginia had some swagger. Like they felt like, hey, we're gonna make this game against TCU ugly and we're gonna win. And they never seemed to doubt it, even after they fell behind 7-0 with like their offense looking terrible on the first drive and their defense looking terrible on the first drive. Um, so I do think it helps their attitude. I do think they kind of just embrace that. But it also gets me thinking about something that I know you've argued before, and several people on our message board have as well, and maybe taking it a little to the extreme, pushing the, hey, we should run the triple option wishbone offense. But I think you put it a little better, a little more moderately, if you will. Do something different. If everyone else in the league is running like a pass happy spread option offense, they're going to be used to that. They're going to be accustomed to that. They're going to know how to defend that. And if you try to do the same thing, but you're trying to do it with lesser athletes, it's not going to work. Like it's not. So how about do something different? And I think that was an argument you made. It might have been last year, maybe even the year before that. And that seems to be like what they're doing. Like, hey, let's try stop being something we're not, and we'll do this instead. And it's different, and people are going to have a hard time with it. And we're just going to embrace it.
Now the drawback there, by the way, great recollection that I did make that point. Great point too. But sometimes we forget about these things because we say so many things. But it's also not popular to be like, hey, wait a minute, how dare West Virginia zag? Because you look at can they be the team that looks at the way college football is going and say, actually, we're going to go another way? It takes a lot to do that, but they're doing those things that keep that style afloat. And it's not just like that they're good at their offense, because you can make the argument they're really not that good at their offense. But let's just say personnel wise, they have a running quarterback, which that asks some questions and it gives defenses problems. It just does. So that helps. But even beyond that, the calls of plays, the style of play, whether it's fast, whether it's just run inside zone, outside zone, but their turnovers really down. They should have a lot more turnovers on defense, but they get a lot of first downs. They are not good on third down, but they have a lot of time possession, which means that they're getting first downs on first and second down, but they're also slow and deliberate the way they play. They typically get touchdowns when they're in the red zone. More exceptions to that lately, so maybe that's changing. They just do certain things that maybe they don't have the talent to, similar to like if they don't have the talent to run like a wide open four verts air raid crazy like circus style offense. Well, maybe they don't have the talent to just be effective doing a different thing, but you can piece together little intangible stuff around it, whether it's no penalties, whether it's not turning the ball over, being 7 over 3. And they're doing enough of those things right now that's making a difference. And on top of that, they've played really, really good defense. That helps too. But the one thing that I think you have to go back, said this before through the years, kind of like the enduring quality of Brown's program is that they play really hard. And I wonder last year if it was hard to play hard the way they played. Like how hard do you play to run like a mesh, versus how hard do you play to ram it right through the defensive line, 3 times in a drive, 6 times in a drive. And if you are playing hard on offense, you're making the team play hard on defense. And then conversely, like West Virginia runs a bunch of defensive linemen in. Typically, offenses don't run a bunch of offensive linemen in, but if West Virginia's running 6, 8, 9 defensive linemen in, they're playing hard. Well, that makes it really difficult on the other team's offensive line to play hard because you're fresh, they're not. So, like, I go back to some of the stuff that if you can read this, like what Sonny Dykes said about West Virginia, tough, physical team. They play hard, they play physical. Like he saw it coming. And I don't think teams said that so much about West Virginia last year. And if you got ahead on West Virginia, you typically got far ahead on West Virginia. And that's not the case right now. And this just seems to align physically, personality, what they want to do. And I don't know, just those comments by Dykes last week were kind of telling me that this was getting back into what they wanted. I don't know how great it's going to be long term. I don't know if they can keep all these intangible things going on their side. It might just be a really good run right now, but it might also be the run they have to continue. It just does seem like it's working right now.
And do we say that starts with defense? Would you agree with like the personality and the way they've just changed their attitude starts with the defense this year?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the linchpin, I think.
And you can look at a couple stats, and it just pops right away. I'm working on the havoc rate as we speak, but if you look at, say, for instance, just getting pressure on the quarterback, like I mean, havoc rate is kind of related to pressure on the quarterback, but last year West Virginia averaged about 13 pressures per game on the quarterback. That was meh, meh. Now they're 18 through 5 games. And I think people might look at me, that's only like five more, but five more pressures on the quarterback is a pretty drastic difference and really changes things up. It's going to alter throws. It's going to create more interceptions. It's going to might create more sacks. It's going to create negative or zero plays, which can really, again, it has like a cascading effect of if that's happening on first down, now all of a sudden it's second and 15, and then second and 15, they're only going to get a few, and now it's third and 10 instead of a first down or third and two. And so that defense seems to have a new mentality, and that mentality is more of a creating havoc and getting pressure on the quarterback than it was this past season. And I mean, who knows what might happen if the defense learns to actually catch a football with their hands because it's wild what they're doing differently from last year. I just mentioned the pressures up front, the pressures on the back end. West Virginia last year ranked 123rd out of 131 teams in passes defended. 123rd out of 131 teams. They're currently number 6 in the country
Hmm.
in passes defended this season. They almost have as many passes defended through 5 games as they did all of last season. Like that's that's nuts. And again, when you get pressure up front and you're putting pressure on the back end, hey, good things happen. So you're really seeing a difference from that defense and the mentality they have on all three levels, really.
So the question we've had for weeks and weeks now, which the answer may be in the question, but we have repeatedly asked, okay, is this sustainable? I just don't know they can have this scoring offense and be a winning football program. It's gonna have to get better. But then we're also talking about this as an identifiable and here up to this point successful style. And it just kind of is what they are. Like they're not engineered to play air raid, to play up tempo. They can pick their spots. They can then they still run air raid stuff, but like they're so much of a run based offense and they're going to be deliberate when they have the ball. It doesn't make sense for them to get out of their lane unless they have to, or unless they find something that works. Maybe they spark the offense, jumper cables, whatever you want to call it. So the question then, Chris, is not like, is this sustainable? It's more of a challenge. And again, I'll volley back over to you here. How do they make this sustainable? It's not a yes or no question right now. The answer has to be yes, so they're going to win and they're going to keep this going. So yes, it's sustainable, but how? Are there players? Are there aspects of the offense, the defense, the special teams? Are there stats that you note that whether they're not there now or they are there right now, that those are keys to extending this for the remaining 7 games of the season?
I I hate to kind of single out I mean, one, like we've talked about the wide receivers, and that's a problem. Just as a whole, I don't know what the answer is, and it doesn't seem like they're seemingly trying everyone that's on the roster. So it's not like there's somebody waiting in the wings that's going to just completely flip everything for them this season. They're trying freshmen, they're trying former walk-ons. They're anybody and everybody that's there, they're trying. And right now they're not getting the answers they need. And that's a problem. And I just don't see how that's going to get better this year, which you really, I mean, maybe that's what the bye week is for, excuse me, open week is for. So you can help scheme these receivers open more. But at some point, you just need them to win one-on-one battles. And right now, it just doesn't seem to have the manpower to do that. You're going to see, for those listening, if you are VIP subscriber to our site, no, I think I'm making this one free. It's going to be the report card for the first 5 games, like through PFF. And I believe it's the bottom 5 players on the team for their grading scale are all receivers, all of them. It's like the bottom 5, 6 of the bottom 7, or 7 of the bottom 9, something like that. It's just everyone except for basically Hudson Clement is in the bottom 8 of the team in PFF grade right now at receiver. And I think that I know people don't completely buy into PFF all the time, but that jives with what you see with your own eyes. And it jives with what you hear from the coaching staff too, because Neil Brown has not minced words about it. He's had some positive things to say about Garrett Green and Nico Marchio and kind of put a lot of the blame in the lack of passing game. on the receivers. And I think that's where the biggest fix needs to be.
Hmm. That's going to be tough. I
Yeah,
will say
because
this.
I mean, what's the fix? Like, there's no more personnel to try, and these guys aren't going to get suddenly bigger and faster in the next week and a half. So it's going to come down to some strange scheming.
Yeah, which let's get into this. They have they've succeeded with some additions, not in the roster, but in what they're doing. So this is part of probably a larger story. But they were very physical in the spring and in camp. That made their defensive line better by having to just battle that offensive line again and again and again. We've seen the defensive line is very good. They tackled a ton in the preseason. They've tackled pretty well, but also because they practiced so hard and they tackled so much, they're a pretty physical defensive team, maybe also offensive team. They, as we have chronicled, scrapped their like pattern matching zone coverage in the offseason and just said we're going to play regular man or regular drop zone. Secondary is better after a change that they made within the season where they said, listen, we got to get closer to people. We got to put hands on people. We got to keep eyes on the quarterback. We got to bump routes. We got to jump balls. And all of a sudden they're better. So when they have isolated some sort of an issue, and this is recent history, I understand, but recent history is much more relevant to the present. They've improved it. Um, did they improve it by shaking things up at receiver? We haven't seen that yet, but they're really trying to get EJ Horton going and definitely Rodney Gallagher going. And we saw Jaheim White by one reason or another jump up to number 2 running back. Those are 3 guys that just have juice on the offense and that can do something to help. 2 at receiver too. One's an outside guy, Horton. One's an inside guy, Gallagher. Can they lift those guys up where they become like actual contributors on a regular basis? Not like a couple of plays and one catch a game, not like flip a handoff to this guy because he can get around the corner and not much else. Can they make him parts of it? I think you cross your fingers there and you maybe are optimistic because, again, recent history says that when they've isolated something, it's gotten better. The trouble is that's a lot of defensive improvement there. We haven't really talked about a lot of offensive improvement. And I think if you cataloged your list of concerns on offense would outnumber the concerns on defense, and the resolutions on defense would outnumber the resolutions on offense. And that's certainly a challenge because it's admirable they have this offensive style right now, but can they make it work? And to sustain it, yeah, they're going to have to actually break some plays. Their running backs, as we mentioned, don't really do that. That's fine. They're also running into a lot of walls. So if they can do something with those walls and pass over to around it or run away from them, they can make some plays, but they're going to have to find a way to like shock this offense and get players who can do that. And they just have a small number of players who can do that or who can do that, but have not yet do that. And they might even be the same people too. That's going to be tricky. And then frankly, some of their efficiency things are going to have to be good. They're going to have to just win the turnover battle. They're going to have to be very good on special teams again. They're going to have to use that defense as like I said, a real leverage point by making field position one of their enemies, one of their adversaries. And they've done that so far. So what they're doing, they're going to have to really be good at that. Like they're going to have to be elite when it comes to efficiency, but so far, so good. The thing about this, Chris, is that their remaining schedule is very middle of the pack in the country. I was looking at your ESPN FPI. They had West Virginia favored to win 5 of their final 7 games too. And people just didn't see that early in the season. Things have changed. The conference is what it is. It's probably not what people thought it was going to be, but favored in 5 of their final 7 games, friendly road games. Maybe the better teams are at home. The games they need to win at home, they're going to make a move or at home. Middle of the pack future strength of schedule. They really could get in a run here. Again, I'm not saying they win the next 2, but the next 2 were maybe their most winnable remaining games, especially coming off of an open week. Or a chance to be bowl eligible before November. Kind of crazy when you think about it, but they still have the work to do. And like you said, that thing on offense that they're going to have to constantly monitor and manage is who's playing receiver. What are they getting out of that? Because the quarterback play might get better. Did you think that maybe they got a little bit of a rhythm pass catch in that second half? It wasn't prolific, but it did seem a little bit more threatening.
Seemed to have like a drive or two in each of the last couple of games because even with Markio against Texas Tech, they had that one drive where they talked about it. Like Gilbert was like, "Hey, we had pulled him aside and said we're gonna let it fly. We need to pass the ball. We need to score here." And that drive looked like a completely different offense. And then Green, yeah, started connected with a couple guys, got moving down the field. And I think I even tweeted at the time, I was like, wow, that looked like a completely different offense for like that one drive. Um, it obviously needs to expand beyond one drive, but yeah, you can see the potential there. You can see the possibilities. But it is going to require guys getting open because I think Green has the arm strength. I actually think he's doing a nice job with his reads, progressing through his reads. Because even on that touchdown run early in the game, he went through all of his reads. He went right down the progression, went to the first receiver, second receiver, third receiver, I think back to the first receiver, and then was like, all right, well, oh, there's an open lane. I'll run now. Credit to the offensive line for giving him that time, and credit to him for doing what he's supposed to do. That was the kind of play where he would just run and run too early, and maybe not have had that lane, and Neil Brown would have lost his mind, and fans would have been like, "Hey, why are they so mad? Green got a 7 yard run." And this is why, because this is that play was what it's supposed to look like, where you go through your progressions, then find the lane. Um, Real quick, Mike, speaking of the offensive line, little stat. Here it is. Average yards downfield where first contact is made with a running back. Okay.
So yards
Last year,
gained before contact.
right.
Okay.
So last year, 2.18 yards downfield past the line of scrimmage before a defender made contact. That's a very solid number for an entire season. And that's credit to the offensive line and their blocking, the scheming by the coaching staff. This year, 2.1. Like it's not that like the lanes or what even with teams stacking the box more so than I would say they did last year. Like they're still blocking down the field. First contact's not being made until over 2 yards down the thing. It's just again the difference is they're just not breaking tackles. Missed tackles forced way down. CJ Donaldson, his yards per carry or yards after contact is down almost 2 yards. I believe it was like 4 point something to 2 point something. So again, some of that's on the running backs that they got to get open. We're talking a lot of skill position player problems here for West Virginia.
No magic wand there. Mike Joseph can't fix that right now. So we'll see how that works out. My final football question, because I know you want to flip sports here in a minute, which is a good thing to do, but we have mentioned plenty of times how the future non-conference schedule has to be structured. Let me ask you this, Chris. Somebody gives Rem Baker $1 million in the offseason and says, get out of this Penn State game. This team has a chance to be good. You buy out Penn State and you stay in Pennsylvania and you get Temple. You beat Temple, Duquesne, Pitt, and you're 2-0 in the Big 12. You're 5-0 right now, 2-0 in the conference. Probably ranked. Is that best for the program right now, or is 4-1, 2-0 good enough considering where things have been?
Think, I mean, obviously 5-0 looks better than 4-1, but
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, like I was about to say, I was trying to make an argument, but I was like, nah, you know what? It just looks better and it plays better. And if you're going into and you're already seeing it with 4-1, if you're going into your open week and going out to see recruits and stuff, you are you're not hiding in the stands with a polo on and maybe covering up your logo because you're 1-4. You are proudly wearing your WVU bomber jacket, even if it's 80 degrees in Florida, and walking around with your shades on like you're a big deal and letting everyone know I'm here. So wins are always good, Mike. That's my official stance.
Yep, I think so. And I think like that's why it makes sense to do this like one Power Five thing. It's really cool to open up against Power Five. You can still do that. Just don't play two of them. And man, there's gonna be so many conference games now that you got to get on TV or whatever. I think you're gonna see early conference games too. And like if you can get a couple of conference games, one conference game within your non-conference, I know coaches don't like that necessarily, but if you're interested in momentum and getting going, there's a chance to steal wins there or just get some attention on you. It's like having a Power Five in the non-conference. It's like playing Kansas last year in your second game of the season. Obviously, that was not great because what Kansas was doing offensively, but you can interrupt your non-conference by getting a good win in there. And if you're worried about pole position early, hey, that helps. Finally, Chris, let's flip to basketball here. Jose Perez, if I have this right, twice tweeted that he was going nowhere and would come back to the team. Enter the transfer portal, came back, and is now no longer part of the program. A like the 6 p.m. news dump the day of a football game saying that he is no longer part of the program. Reportedly from other people that we can kind of cooperate. I'm not sure that we want to call it an academic issue because that sounds like eligibility or something scandalous, but it does sound like it was within the realm of academic responsibilities, we could say. But here we are, so close to the regular season, just like a week and a day into preseason practice. And this is like one of those Jenga pieces that you just pulled out. And this is a little bit wobblier than it was before. Or was it? I don't know. Guy hasn't played, has certainly had an eventful time on campus, some of it to help him, some of it to make sure that he was going to be part of this program, and he's not right now. We have no idea what he was going to be like. We don't know much of what he was like as a player. We just know he's not part of the program right now.
Yeah, it's a tough situation, and I think I put it up earlier that West Virginia dumped a ton of money and resources into this. Ton. I think I was trying to make clear that it was a lot of money, and I think I said millions, and I edited that, took out millions. I don't know if it was that high. I'm not gonna sit here and audit what was being done for him, but NIL money, money spent to go recruit him the first time, money spent to recruit him the second time when he was going to the portal, his scholarship, his stipend, his more NIL money, on and on and on and on. It wasn't a small, you know, feat to get him and keep him at West Virginia. So this is not a situation where, as it was being portrayed, I believe Perez kind of hinted at it, and Trilly Donovan, for those who are on Twitter, wrote a story saying that he skipped study hall on Wednesday. And that's when it all started, I believe was what the quote was. It's like, I'm told very clearly that it did not start and end with a single missed study hall. And I can guarantee you West Virginia University did not part ways with a guy who could potentially start for this basketball team over a single missed study hall.
No one believes that,
Um,
right? Like, no one.
no, I mean, I don't know why anybody would believe that, but it's some gullible people out there.
What does this do on the floor? Off the floor, I don't know because I've heard just various different things about him. Complicated would be a word. And maybe people like him. Maybe people don't want to deal with that clutter. You probably have to credit Josh Eiler for doing something difficult here, but I think that maybe he saw something down the road that could be an issue. Might have had no choice either. I'm not sure. We'll learn more. We have Josh Eiler interviews tomorrow. I don't expect him to say much of anything, but still credit for him because here's a guy who wants to get this job. And his job becomes harder, presumably on the floor, without Jose Perez. Off the floor, don't know. Maybe he saw that and we don't know that. But on the floor, this is a projected starter. And not only that, Chris, it's like a flexible piece who was like the 2/3. I think a lot of people had him pegged into like the backcourt, but more of a wing spot. Kind of a grown up kid that can play basketball and had some good performances in the summer and had been very good in practice, apparently. I should say workouts, things like that. But even last year when he was allowed to play, he was good. They like him. They liked him as a player. They certainly did a lot to get him on the floor. But again, you lose the player, that's troublesome. You lose that flexible piece, which is part of your identity on offense. You could be fast in the front court. Maybe you can now, but that just shortens everything up. X and O wise, what does this do to change? I don't want to say hinder, but to change what Josh Eiler aims to do, which is new and different on offense.
I'm with you. Like, if you look at this roster and who was going to be there, he's not in the top three players that were on the team. Like that goes to Krisa, Battle, and Edwards. Problem is, one, as you noted, he's probably the most flexible and the guy who could do so much. He could really like a pivot point for your lineup.
Hmm.
Like you could move him here, and then you could completely change how you the five guys you have on the court or how you're running or where you're running your offense through. So that hurts because again, he's not a bad player. Like this West Virginia team is talented. And so to say that he's not in the top three is not that big of an insult. But the other part of this is he might have ended up being in the top three because We're still waiting on word on the Raekwon Battle waiver. And that's one of those things where if Battle's out, then it exacerbates the problem from the loss of Perez and makes it that much worse if he's gone, if Battle is also out for this season. So it's something to watch moving forward for sure because there's it's I don't believe it's possible to replace him at this point in the cycle. So the team is what it is right now.
I don't know what this team is. Just like hearing Eiler talk about it, like they had a couple of offensive players that were aggressive, and Perez was one of them. Like Krisa is more of like your like legitimate point guard who's going to try to get everybody involved. That's one less person to be involved. I know they want Krisa to be like a lot of shots per game guy, but if he can get easy buckets and free throws and step in threes and get a lot of assists, they want to play fast. And like if you have more legs and more dribblers out there, you can do that. And Perez is one of them. Big guy, can probably be a versatile defender, rebound a little bit. Got to the free throw line a ton, got in the paint a ton. That's easy baskets. And that team has been starved for easy baskets in the past, but not easy for Josh Eiler, and it wasn't going to be, but now it's a little bit more complicated, and we'll hear tomorrow about his plan. Chris, really quickly, what do you have planned for the audience here during this open week?
I got some report card updates coming for grades and our own grades on these players and how they're doing so far. Going to take a look at some recruiting things. Got a lot of new offers going out. Coaches going to visit players. So a lot of recruiting news coming up this week, and then maybe we take a few more minutes on basketball later this week as well.
Yep, we'll press pause on the football season, look at some things, how they're going, maybe some explanations about what's happening, and then we'll get into some basketball because the stage is theirs for a couple of days, and certainly the spotlight is on the roster right now. Until then, I am Mike Casaza.
I'm Chris Anderson.
We will talk to you then.